Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is Explanation of Battle Through the Heavens episode number 239 based on novel. So let's start. Jeonnan Academy. Many students came and went along a big road with trees lined by the side. The energy unique to the young men and women spread across the forest. They were completely unaware of the big battle that was about to arrive. Hence, they did not panic. Their conversations were all related to the scene when Xiao Yang had appeared back then. The tone they used was filled with admiration and excitement. Xiao Yang was lying on a tall tree in his rare relaxed moment. He looked at the azure sky while his mouth was chewing onto a grass, which gradually filled it with some bitterness. It had been many years since he was able to quietly lie in the academy and watch the sky. It has been many years. Xiao Yang shut his eyes and involuntarily sighed quietly. Now that he thought about it, the scene of his training within this Jeonnan Academy back then was still fresh in his mind. Yet, in the blink of an eye, he was already no longer the youth from back then. It has indeed been many years. A soft voice was suddenly transmitted from beside Xiao Yang's ears. He opened his eyes and looked at the pretty instructor, who had a pair of long sexy legs beside him. A grin appeared and the corner of his mouth involuntarily revealed a teasing smile. What beautiful legs! Xiao Yu's face involuntarily reddened upon hearing this. She glared violently at Xiao Yang and chided. You are already so old, but you still don't know how to be serious. The corner of Xiao Yang's mouth wore a smile. Both of his hands were placed behind his head. He did not say anything. This quiet atmosphere was something that he really liked. During these years, he had been pressured by the Hall of Soul and the Hun clan to the point where he could hardly catch his breath. This was because he understood that only by continuously training would he be able to escape from the fate of being shattered into pieces by that huge mountain. Moreover, the moment that he was destroyed, his family and clan would also end up with the same fate. The big battle was arriving. Xiao Yang understood that this might probably be a decisive battle. However, it was precisely because of this that his originally tensed heart had relaxed significantly. He had done all that he could do. He had also put in the greatest effort to strengthen himself. Now, it was time to await the result. Xiao Yu sat down elegantly beside Xiao Yang. She turned her head and looked at the face with narrowed eyes. This face appeared even more mature and determined compared to back then. The original tenderness had vaguely developed into another charm. It was a face that one could watch for a long time. Xiao Yu curled her red lips. She had seen many young and talented individuals during these years that she had spent teaching in the academy. There were many amongst them who had begun a wild pursuit of her. However, all of them ultimately failed. This was because she would always shake her head each time she compared those people to this person in front of her. After all these years of training, she understood just how outstanding and dazzling this man in front of her was. It would be good if we are not blood-related. At times, some strange thoughts would appear within Xiao Yu's heart, causing her face and ears to redden while she repeatedly scolded herself for being shameless in her heart. Are you thinking of romance? Xiao Yang had opened his eyes at some unknown moment. He looked at the pretty female instructor by the side, who was biting her red lips, and smilingly asked. That's right. Xiao Yu's bright eyes blinked this time around as she smiled sweetly. This reply caused Xiao Yang to be startled. Under normal circumstances, Xiao Yu should have sent him a flying kick. He lifted his gaze and looked at Xiao Yu's pretty eyes. There was something flowing in them. Immediately, coughed softly and withdrew his gaze. Xiao Yu's silver teeth bit on her red lips with a greater force after seeing Xiao Yang withdraw his gaze. After which, the ripple within her was gradually reduced. She stared at Xiao Yang and softly said, "Thank you." Huh. Xiao Yang was once again startled. He immediately laughed. You seems to be quite baffling. This is the words that the clan members has asked me to bring to you the last time I returned to the Jeonnan Empire. Xiao Yu laughed. Xiao Yang was a little stunned. The smile on the corner of his mouth became much warmer. Currently, those younger generation and even some of the older generation of the Xiao clan regards you like a god. Other people can scold them, but if those people dared to say anything about you, they will definitely attack. There has been many clan members who had charged into various sects by themselves because of this. Xiao Yu laughed. Her soft voice appeared as though she was talking about an ordinary family matter. It was exceptionally warm. This god of theirs was called a useless trash back then. Xiao Yang parted his mouth and laughed. Petty fellow. That was something from when all of us were very young, yet you still remember it. Xiao Yu rolled her enchanting eyes at Xiao Yang and said. Xiao Yang laughed. He continued hearing Xiao Yu softly speaking about the matters in the clan while looking at the azure sky. He had not had such an enjoyment for many years. Xiao Yu and Xiao Mai had returned to the Jeonnan Empire a few years ago. It is rumored that they are now experts who can hold their own. Some years ago, the clan had wanted to choose a clan head. However, no matter how they chose, all of the ballots had your name on them, causing those elders be unable to laugh nor cry. Xiao Yu spoke softly. A moment later, she finally paused and looked at the man beside her, who had his eyes shut. The latter's breathing was also a lot calmer. At this moment, Xiao Yang was as quiet as a baby. Xiao Yang had slept. Even Xiao Yu was startled after seeing Xiao Yang's current condition. Some pity appeared in her eyes. Her hand carefully shifted Xiao Yang's head and placed them on her soft legs. She lowered her head and watched his face. The smile on the corner of her mouth appeared extremely gentle. The members of the clan are aware of how much you have sacrificed. You have been carrying the heavy burden alone. In order to protect the clan, you have been working hard while risking your life. Many little fellows in the clan are doing their best to train. They had said that they will be able to help you after becoming stronger. Dense branches spread over the towering giant tree as a gentle breeze blew over. Who? Xiao Yu gently exhaled a fragrant breath. She looked at the quiet face. Her hand was about to gently touch it when Xiao Yang's originally tightly shut eyes were suddenly opened. The original silence quickly scattered the moment the black eyes were opened. A sharpness that caused one's soul to tremble once again surfaced within those black eyes. Xiao Yu was startled as she looked at the face, which had turned from a peaceful to a sharp one in an instant. Her hand was placed down without anyone noticing as she sweetly smiled. Are you awake? I. Xiao Yang nodded slightly. He stood up and looked towards the distant sky before commenting in a faint voice, "They are here." Xiao Yu was startled upon hearing this. Due to her relationship with Xiao Yang, she was aware of some secrets. Naturally, she understood who the they that Xiao Yang referred to were. "They're too quick," Xiao Yu frowned and remarked. "Inform First Elder. Gather all the students together. Otherwise, they won't be able to endure it once the fight begins." Xiao Yang instructed in a deep voice. "Understood." Xiao Yu quickly nodded. Her delicate body moved and she opened her stride. Xiao Yang hesitated for a moment before he once again said, "Thank you very much, Sister Xiao Yu." Xiao Yu was startled after hearing this form of address. This was the first time that Xiao Yang had ever called her sister. The two of them had been odds with each other since they were young and had continuously argued with each other each time they met. Obedient little brother. This older sister is waiting to see you display your heroic might, Xiao Yu suddenly laughed. She quickly flew downwards. Those eyes of hers were a little dim when she turned around. They were brother and sister. Xiao Yang stood on the top of a tree with his hands placed behind him. He glanced at Xiao Yu's descending figure only to sigh. He was not a fool and was naturally able to clearly see through many matters. However, it was perhaps very difficult for there to be any result when it came to certain matters. Xiao Yang shook his head and tossed aside the melancholy within his heart. After which, his eyes solemnly looked towards the horizon. He could detect an intense energy fluctuation from that spot. This fluctuation was not unfamiliar to him. A couple of figures flashed and appeared while Xiao Yang was in deep thought. They were Zun Er's and Cai Lin's group. The Hun clan is coming. The two ladies looked at the sky and asked. Xiao Yang nodded. He lowered his head to look at the academy. At this moment, all the instructors in the academy were leading the students to gather at an open ground. An anxious atmosphere enveloped this place. "Everyone, be careful during this battle." Xiao Yang looked at Zun Er and Kailin beside him and softly reminded. "You too." The two ladies nodded gently. Xiao Yang smiled and suddenly stepped forward. He extended his hand and hugged Zun Er and Cai Lin in front of their red faces. He softly said, "If we can succeed in solving this matter, we will organize a grand wedding." An embarrassed and joyous expression surged in the eyes of those two ladies as they nodded. A warmth was felt as he hugged the two ladies. Xiao Yam hurried down the large tree and appeared on the open ground. He waved his hand and a huge crack appeared in the space. The crack led to the heavenly tomb. "First Elder, relax, I have already instructed the creatures inside. They will not harm the students." Xiao Yang opened the tunnel, looked at Su Qian and said, "Little fellow, thank you very much." Su Qian nodded. He gave Xiao Yang a deep bow and did not dare delay. With great speed, he directly rushed into the spatial tunnel. Densely packed students surged in like floodwaters. Xiao Yang once again rose into the air after the students entered the heavenly tomb. He looked at the distance. After which, the black cloud swiftly flew over with lightning-like speed. A monstrous-like aura spread across the black cloud. Xiao Yang let out a long breath and clenched his fist as he looked at the earth-shaking like momentum. The Alliance army has arrived. Xiao Yang exhaled. He suddenly turned his eyes towards the northern sky. The space at that spot shook intensely and many figures appeared from all over the place. It cut through the distant space, carrying a rushing wind sound that resounded in the sky as they hurried towards the Jianan Academy. A pride suddenly surged in Xiao Yang's heart as he looked at the formation that spread across the sky. He let out a long roar towards the sky. The roar was like a thunder which rumbled across the sky. It could clearly be heard within a 50-kilometer radius. Hun clan, if you wish to fight, I will fight until your fill. The black cloud covered the sky, which seemed to have turned dim in an instant. Monstrous-like aura spread in the black cloud and reverberated across this place. It caused the land to shake slightly. There were presently still many people and faction remaining in the Black Corner region. Although Xiao Yang and the others had already warned them, these people did not choose to leave. Most of those who could survive in the Black Corner region were heartless and bold individuals. Hence it was naturally not easy to get them to abandon the territory that they had fought for many years with just a few words. Xiao Yang and the others simply left things as it was after their warning was unheeded. They would naturally regret it when the time come. The Xiao Gate had also been sent into the Heavenly Tomb early on. Regardless of what the situation was, this was after all a faction he had established back then. He would naturally not hold back if he could help them. Hence, the current Black Corner region was much emptier as compared to before. Although some stubborn fellows refused to leave, there were also some decisive individuals. After all, the massacre that had happened a couple of days earlier had allowed them to understand just how terrifying the so-called Hun clan. The black cloud spread and covered the area around the Black Corner region. Immediately, the black cloud churned and whistled out from his body in a dense fashion. Xiao Yang's expression was grave as he looked at the figures that covered the sky. From the looks of it, the Hun clan had come out in full force. It seemed that Hun Tiendi had full intent on obtaining the ancient god mansion. Be careful. Zuna softly spoke by the side. Her pretty eyes were filled with worry. Even she felt that this lineup was extremely terrifying. Xiao Yang nodded slightly. His eyes looked at the middle of the black cloud. There were dozens of figures appearing in the space. The leader was the clan head of the Hun clan, Hun Tiendi. The nihility-devouring flame followed closely behind. Behind them were the 4 old undying fellow who had built the death world back then. The aura of these 4 old fellows who would not die had actually recovered. Xiao Yang's eyes glanced at the 4 individuals and his heart sunk involuntarily. 4 experts comparable to an 8-star Do Sheng. This was sufficient to cause an imbalance between both parties. During the time when Xiao Yang had a solemn face because of the Hun clan's lineup, the space above the academy also swiftly became distorted. Immediately, densely packed human figures flashed and appeared. The Alliance army had also arrived. Xiao Yang's body flashed as he saw the black mass of people suddenly appearing in the sky. He immediately appeared in front of the Alliance army. It seems that your guess is correct. This Black Corner region is indeed the location of the Chu-Shi ancient god mansion. Jiyu Yuan gazed at the large Hun clan's army in the distance and said. Xiao Yang nodded. His eyes swept over the Alliance army. Suddenly, he discovered that the lineup of the Alliance army seemed to have become a lot stronger compared to the last time. The strength within all our 3 clans had been fully unleashed. Jiyu Yuan appeared to be aware of Xiao Yang's surprise and laughed. Don't the 3 clans need to dispatch people to guard your clans? Xiao Yang frowned and asked. The Hun clan does not have the courage to separate and attack our 3 clans at this moment. Lei Ling by the side spoke in a deep voice. This fight is extremely important. Whoever loses will likely end up with a terrible fate where one can never recover from. Since this is the case, we can only risk it all. Yang Jin laughed. However, a sharp cold light surged within his eyes. Xiao Yang was speechless. He quietly nodded. Indeed, if Hun Tiendi was allowed to successfully advance to the Do D class, only one fate that awaits the 3 clan regardless of how they defend. Since this was the case, it was better to risk everything and fight now. That's right, I have already ventured into the bottom of the magma and discovered the ancient god mansion inside. However, there is a mysterious creature guarding at the entrance to the mansion. Its strength is extremely terrifying. I think that it is likely not weaker than Uncle Jiyu or Hun Tiendi. Xiao Yang spoke with a serious face. These words caused not only the expressions of Lei Ying and the others to change, but it also led to Jiyu Yuan body trembling slightly. This big battle would be a little unpredictable if this was the case. An advanced level 9-star Do Sheng could alter the result of the battle. I have never heard of any non-human race producing an advanced level 9-star Do Sheng class expert within the last 1,000 years. It is likely that this mysterious creature has existed for an extremely long period of time. Even Hun Tiendi and I might not be comparable with it, Jiyu Yuan muttered. Xiao Yang and the others nodded. One could indeed explain it this way. After all, that fellow must have existed for a very long period of time in order to become the guardian of the ancient god mansion. It was not unbelievable to say that it was older than Jiyu Yuan and Hun Tiendi. After all, the life of such a magical beast was its natural advantage. Hun Tiendi slowly stepped out from the distant space while Xiao Yang's group chatted. His eyes were indifferent as they glanced at the opposing alliance. Finally, they paused onto Jiyu Yuan and Xiao Yang. Jiyu Yuan, what I have told you earlier is still valid now. If I really successfully advance into the Do D class and you surrender to me, I will not show you any mercy. You should reconsider for the sake of the continuity of the Jiyu clan. Han Tiandi spoke in a calm voice. Jiyu Yuan could not resist laughing after seeing that this person was actually still intending on cooperating with him. He did not speak. All he did was to lift his hand and swung it gently. Immediately, countless number of powerful auras erupted from the Alliance army. Cold and sharp eyes were locked onto the Han clan's army. How unfortunate. Han Tiandi sighed softly upon seeing this. He did not say anything else. A bright light cluster flew out from within his storage ring and floated above his head. A foggy light was vaguely present within the light cluster. Finally, it turned into an illusory ancient figure. The energy of this entire place seemed to have boiled following the appearance of the ancient figure. An overlord-like pressure descended from the sky. Tushi ancient god, Jiyu Yuan, Xiao Yang and the others had grave faces as they watched the bright-haired old man. A solemn exclamation sounded. The only one in this world who could possess such an aura was likely the legendary Tushi ancient god Jade. They wished to use the Tushi ancient god Jade to summon the ancient god mansion. Jiyu Yuan's eyes flashed as he cried out. Bang! Han Tiandi lifted the Tushi ancient god Jade before he suddenly slammed his palm towards the Jiunan Academy below. With this strike, a giant 10,000 feet large hand appeared in the sky. Immediately, dust quickly scattered. A loud rumbling sound resounded over this place. The enormous Jiunan Academy was directly turned into a tens of thousands of feet large deep gully under this palm strike by Han Tiandi. There was suddenly the sound of liquid flowing within the deep gully. Soon after, a crimson liquid flowed out from within the ruins of the Jiunan Academy. In the blink of an eye, it had buried the Jiunan Academy in magma. This palm strike of Han Tiandi had not only turned the Jiunan Academy into ruins but it had even forced the magma out from underground. Hot magma swiftly surged out from underground like a bright red wave. After which, it spread over the Black Corner region in a mighty fashion. With this speed, the Black Corner region would likely be turned into a sea of magma soon. Stop them. Do not allow Han Tiandi to use the ancient jade to summon the ancient god cave. Jiyu Yuan cried out in a deep voice as he looked at the sea of magma spreading under him. Attack! Lei Ying, Yang Jin and the rest suddenly cried out after hearing Jiyu Yuan. Immediately, countless number of Doqi pillars shot out from the Alliance army behind them and shot towards the Han clan's army from all directions. In formation, many stern cries were also emitted from within the Han clan's army after they saw the Alliance army unleashing an attack. Immediately, many black chains with black fog lingering over them shot out from the army. Finally, they crossed each other. In the blink of an eye, they turned into a huge dragnet. Bang! Vast and mighty Doqi light pillars continued to explode on the chain formation, emitted waves of sharp miserable cries. The black fog on the chains also paled rapidly. Seeing the terrifying and indescribable fight that had occurred in the sky, some of the experts and factions, who were originally remaining in the Black Corner region, were shocked to the point of having ashen faces. They lowered their heads to look at the Black Corner region, which had been turned into a sea of magma. In an instant, many people began to hurriedly pull back. Compared to this big battle, all the other battles that they had experienced could be considered child's play. Han Tiandi acted as though he did not notice the intense battle between both parties. He shut his eyes and controlled the ancient jade to sense the ancient god mansion deep under the magma. Humph! Jiyu Yuan let out a cold snort upon seeing this scene. His body moved and he directly appeared outside of the chain formation. He waved his hand and the hard chains immediately exploded apart. Jiyu Yuan, allow me to be the one to fight you instead. A black flame surged in front of Jiyu Yuan just as he was about to attack. The nihility devouring flame appeared behind him. There were also two old men, who had built the Deathworld back then, behind him. It seemed that he also understood that even though his soul had advanced into the D state, he was still no match for Jiyu Yuan in a one-on-one battle. So you have actually advanced into having a D state soul. It looks like the Han clan has really treated you well. With Jiyu Yuan's eyesight, he was naturally able to tell that the current nihility devouring flame had already advanced into having a DI state soul. The nihility devouring flame laughed coldly. He did not utter anything unnecessary to Jiyu Yuan. Instead, he extended his hands. Monstrous black flames erupted. An endless suction force surged out from within his body, causing him to appear like a black hole. The two elders behind him also attacked when the nihility devouring flame struck. Their auras were powerful. Clearly, they were fighting with their full strength. You actually wish to stop me with the three of you? Jiyu Yuan smiled. His body flashed and he appeared in front of an elder with lightning-like speed. A finger was extended. Immediately, the space within 1,000 feet from his collapsed into nothing. After which, the finger was also quickly pressed downwards. The figure had not even made contact with the elder's body when the latter spat out a mouthful of blood and his body staggered backwards in a miserable fashion. Humph! Jiu Yuan was about to attack again after injuring one of them with his finger when a black flame began to envelope him. An endless suction force erupted. It was as though it intended to absorb all of the Do Qi within his body. Your devouring power is useless against me. The vast and mighty Do Qi contained a terrifying spiritual assault as it surged out from within Jiu Yuan's body. It directly shattered the black flame that was wrapped around him. After which, it grabbed towards the nihility devouring flame. Two elderly figures appeared in front of Xiao Yang, who had charged into the battleground, while Jiu Yuan and the nihility devouring flame trio were engaging in a big fight. Their stern cold cries sounded simultaneously. Bastard! Return my deathly silence gate. Hun Yuan Tian. Xiao Yang merely smiled as he saw the two old men, whose body were covered with a rich deathly aura. One of them was Hun Yuan Tian, whose deathly silence gate had been snatched by Xiao Yang back then. Little bastard, you have ruined the plans of my Hun clan. You must definitely die today. Hun Yuan Tian's eyes were vicious as they stared at Xiao Yang. Back then, Xiao Yang had taken advantage of his carelessness to snatch the deathly silence gate, causing the death world to completely collapse. This had resulted in the Hun clan's army to have no choice but to retreat. If it was not because of the current critical state of affairs, it was likely that he would be seriously punished for making such a big mistake even though he was considered a veteran. Even though this was the case, he was still frequently reprimanded by Hun Tiendi during this period of time. Naturally, his hatred towards Xiao Yang was currently quite intense. Xiao Yang simply curled his mouth in the face of Hun Yuantian's vicious words. Immediately, he glanced at the two people in front of him. A grave expression flashed across his eyes. The Hun clan had directly dispatched two 8-star Do Shungs to hold him back. From this, it was obvious that the Hun clan intended to kill him. Although it might be extremely troublesome for Xiao Yang to deal with this, it was also not a simple matter for the opponent to defeat him. After all, he was presently a genuine 7-star Do Shung. Adding his D-state soul, his true fighting strength had far surpassed an ordinary 8-star Do Shung. Although these two were cooperating, they might not be able to beat him. This thought appeared within Xiao Yang's heart. His eyes swiftly swept over the many intense battles throughout the entire Black Corner region. Wild and violent Do Qi spread as many figures fought each other, causing the sea of magma below to continuously emit many thousand feet large magma pillars. The battle is in a stalemate. However, my being able to hold back two of the other party's 8-star Do Shung will greatly reduce the pressure on the Alliance army. The battle was at a stalemate while the sky was like a huge meat grinder. A continuous stream of experts from both parties spat out blood and fell into the magma below. The great heat below turned them into ashes. Little bastard, go and die. Hun Yuandi's eyes became increasingly vicious as he looked at Xiao Yang. At the end, he finally could not resist the fury within his heart. With a stern cry, he swung his hand forward. That palm wind, which was covered with a deathly aura, was swung towards Xiao Yang. One sniff of that scent caused one to feel the life force within one's body to gradually disappear. You have really thought too highly of yourself. Xiao Yang laughed coldly after seeing Hun Yuantian attack. The purifying demonic lotus flame swept out from within his body like a storm. After which, it turned into a giant fire palm that forcefully received the attack by Hun Yuantian. That strange deathly aura of the other party had also been swiftly purified by the purifying strength of the purifying devouring lotus flame. Hun Tianxing, let's attack together and kill this brat. Hun Tiandi's expression changed as the attack made contact. He could sense that the current Xiao Yang was actually much stronger than back then. After which, he hurriedly cried out. The other dark and icy-faced 8-star Do Shung old man also nodded after hearing his cry. The former flashed and appeared behind Xiao Yang. Deathly aura lingered over his finger before it was pressed forward ruthlessly. Death God finger, get lost. The huge black finger broke through the space. It was just about to touch Xiao Yang when the latter threw a punch backwards. A terrifying firestorm was formed under his fist as it whistled forward and directly struck onto the huge black finger. King Kong glass body. Xiao Yang suddenly cried out loud after he threw a punch. His body suddenly swelled to 1,000 feet. Bright golden light surged out from within his body. Extermination fire body. The King Kong glass body had just been unleashed when Xiao Yang once again acted with lightning-like speed. Purifying demonic lotus flame wildly shot out from within his body. His huge body also quickly became crystal clear. Two body-strengthening Do Qi were unleashed simultaneously. This was something that only Xiao Yang could do after having stepped into the D-state soul. Xiao Yang's aura had become violent and sharp after two body-strengthening Do Qi were unleashed together. His large hand was swung and a palm slammed towards Hun Yuantian. At the same time, he also flicked his finger. Yellow spring palm. Great heaven creation palm. Yellow spring finger. 3 different Do skills were formed under Xiao Yang's palm at almost the same time. After which, they violently smashed angrily towards Hun Yuantian. Even Han Yuantian involuntarily had a change in expression after seeing these attacks from Xiao Yang. This ability to use multiple Do Qi together was something that even he did not have. Death Tomb. Dense deathly aura wildly surged out from within Han Yuantian's body. Finally, it turned into a 10,000 feet large black tomb in front of him. There was a sharp sound resounding from the tomb. Bang! Many Tian-class Do skills descended from the sky and violently crashed onto the huge black tomb. Huge energy waves spread, causing the space within 10,000 feet to collapse into a dark black void. Faced with this wild and violent explosion, the deathly aura on the black tomb also rapidly disappeared. Finally, a bang sounded and it exploded apart. Xiao Yang was just about to continue giving chase after glancing at the collapsed tomb when his ear moved. He suddenly turned. His huge fist reflexively smashed ruthlessly onto the space behind him. Bang! The space rippled and a giant black stone pillar broke out from it. It collided heavily with Xiao Yang's fist. Immediately, a loud and clear sound appeared. Xiao Yang and the stone pillar were sent flying backwards. Xiao Yang's body took over a dozen steps back before he stabilized himself. A sweetness rose from his throat. However, this was quickly swallowed by him. The strength of Han Shengtian was even stronger than Han Yuantian. He had also used his full strength when he attacked. However, this kind of collision might have caused Xiao Yang to feel a little terrible, but he did not appear to be in a good condition either. Xiao Yang lifted his eyes. He looked at Han Tiansheng, who had appeared with a stone pillar in his hand. The latter's face was flush red. Even his aura had started to fluctuate intensely. Damn brat. No wonder you are able to snatch the deathly silence gate from Han Yuantian's hands. Han Shengtian stared densely at Xiao Yang and spoke in a low and deep voice. It is becoming increasingly difficult to deal with this brat. Let's attack together and exhaust him to death. Han Yuantian flashed and appeared beside Han Shengtian before speaking in a dense voice. Xiao Yang laughed coldly after hearing these words. He waved his hand and a black light cluster suddenly appeared in it. Finally, it was transformed into a huge giant black gate. It was surprisingly the deathly silence gate. Go it. Xiao Yang waved his sleeve after summoning the deathly silence gate. An intense suction force immediately surged out from within the gate and dragged Han Yuantian Duo into it. Brat, you actually dare to deliver yourself to us. Han Yuantian Duo's eyes brightened after seeing Xiao Yang taking out the deathly silence gate. They did not even put up a resistance as they used the suction force to charge into the deathly silence gate. A cold smile flashed across Xiao Yang's eyes after seeing the actions of those two. He would naturally not repeat the same foolish mistake that Han Yuantian had once made. Han Yuantian Duo appeared within the deathly silence gate. However, they were hurrying to look for the spiritual stone to remove Xiao Yang's spiritual imprint when they suddenly discovered that this deathly silence gate was actually filled with a monstrous flame. Something's wrong, let's escape. The expressions of Han Yuantian Duo changed upon seeing the pink flame that spread over the place. This deathly silence gate had already been meddled with by Xiao Yang. Bang! However, the both of them had just pulled back when the purifying demonic lotus flame around them surged over from all directions. The flame turned into many fire dragons that bite wildly at the duo. Boom! Han Yuantian Duo waved their sleeves. Mighty Do Qi pillars scattered the fire dragons that pounced onto them. Their bodies flashed and they appeared at the entrance to the deathly silence world. A 10,000 feet figure suddenly firmly blocked the exit when the two of them appeared in front of the entrance to Deathly Silence World. Soon after, a terrifying spiritual sonic wave suddenly struck at them. 3 continuous yellow spring divine anger were unleashed. That terrifying spiritual sonic wave attack directly sent Han Yuantian Duo flying backwards by 10,000 feet. This wild attack caused their souls to become a little giddy. Since you have entered, you can forget about leaving. Xiao Yang's icy cold laughter rumbled throughout the Deathly Silence Gate. The seal formed by his hands changed and many 6-colored flames, which were filled with an extermination force, swiftly appeared in his palm. Finally, they continuously flew into the Deathly Silence Gate. The fire lotus came one after another. They floated in the air of the Deathly Silence Gate but did not attack Han Yuantian Duo. Instead, they were being gathered one after another. Within that short moment of time, there was already 10 extermination fire lotus. This number caused the expressions of Han Yuantian Duo to change. They were not afraid of one extermination fire lotus. However, if 10 of them were added together and exploded within this confined space, even the 2 of them would not be able to endure it. Charge out of here. The both of them exchanged glances and clenched their teeth. Immediately, they turned into 2 rays of light that shot towards the exit with lightning-like speed. They decided to endure Xiao Yang's yellow spring divine anger and charge out from the Deathly Silence Gate. It's too late. Xiao Yang merely smiled coldly as he watched the action of those 2. He threw another 3 extermination fire lotus inside. After which, a thought passed through his mind and all the extermination fire lotus within the deathly silence gate wildly exploded at this moment. Moreover, Xiao Yang suddenly slammed his palm onto the deathly silence gate when the extermination fire lotus exploded. The spiritual imprint on the spiritual stone had also been blasted apart. Bang! The deathly silence gate suddenly unleashed waves of black fog as the spiritual stone broke. After which, the space itself also began to collapse at this moment. An indescribable destructive force crazily swept towards Hun Yuan duo with the exterminating strength of the fire lotus explosion. He had let the deathly silence gate self-destruct. An extreme shock and heartache rose onto Hun Yuantian's eyes after he saw this scene. He had been building this deathly silence gate for hundreds of years. Yet, Xiao Yang had simply commanded it to self-destruct. BNAG. However, that terrifying force had already come striking at him while this thought flashed across his mind. It directly devoured the both of them. Xiao Yang watched the deathly silence gate that had exploded wildly from the sky. His body swiftly pulled back and wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead. This time around, these two old undying demons would be seriously injured even if they did not die. How can it be so easy to snatch it back? A low and cold laughter sounded. Xiao Yang's heart shook as he turned towards the sea of magma below. An incomparably large swirl had appeared at that spot. It was as though something was about to appear. Ancient God Mansion, is it finally about to surface? Xiao Yang's eyes became increasingly icy cold as he watched this scene. Giant waves were suddenly formed on the spacious magma sea. A 10,000 feet large whirlpool was slowly formed on the surface of the sea of magma. There seemed to be something appearing from the end of the whirlpool. A kind of mysterious fluctuation rippled throughout the place. The unexpected occurrence that had happened on the magma attracted the attention of many. Immediately, a shocked expression surged on their faces. Xiao Yang's eyes were grave as they looked at the churning magma whirlpool below. A rich caution rose deep within his eyes. He did not forget that there was a mysterious creature guarding the ancient God Mansion. If that thing came charging out, there was no predicting what kind of drastic change would occur in this battle. While Xiao Yang had poured all of his attention into staring at the magma whirlpool, the space a short distance behind him suddenly shook. A miserable old figure appeared. The dense deathly aura, which had originally covered his body, had faded greatly. Clearly, he was seriously injured. He is actually still alive. Xiao Yang turned his head after detecting this person. He looked at the weary old man and a surprise involuntarily flashed across his eyes. However, a cold smile appeared after his eyes swept towards a figure grabbed in Hun Tianxing's hand. That fellow with an unknown fate was naturally Hun Yuantian. Xiao Yang had used over a dozen extermination fire lotus and explode the deathly silence gate. With the superimposition of the two, the destructive force created was frightening enough to cause only to tremble from a feeling a chill. Even though Hun Yuantian duo were 8-star elite Do Sheng, they still ended up with one dead and one seriously injured. Hun Shengtian, who had appeared, spat out a mouthful of fresh blood before looking at Xiao Yang a short distance away with a terrified face. Although there was still a vicious expression flashing in his eyes, he also understood that he was likely unable to fight with Xiao Yang in his current condition. He immediately clenched his teeth and dragged his seriously injured body and quickly withdraw. Xiao Yang glanced at Hun Tianxing, who had escaped, but did not give chase. Although he had schemed and managed to seriously injure one party while killing the other, the exhaustion he had experienced could also not be underestimated. Moreover, the Tushi ancient God Mansion was about to appear. Most of his attention was diverted to it. Even though Hun Shengtian was able to escape, he was unable to participate in the battle. The huge magma whirlpool rotated with an increasingly great intensity. Earth-shaking splashing sound reverberated across the sky. Bang! A loud sound suddenly appeared in the sky. Soon after, miserable figures pulled back. Two of them were in an extreme dire state. The deathly aura that lingered over them had almost completely disappeared. Their fighting strength had also become much weaker. It was really a joke for them to block Jiu Yuan with their strength. As long as the attack from that kind of expert managed to make even the slightest contact with them, they would end up being seriously injured. Nihility, sir, we cannot stop him. The two individuals with deathly aura around them had pale faces as they looked at the nihility devouring flame beside them, who had a somewhat chaotic black flame, and cried out. The black flame within the nihility devouring flame's eyes rippled slightly. Some dissatisfaction flashed across his eyes. It was unexpected that he was still unable to fight against Jiu Yuan despite his soul having advanced to the D state. Jiu Yuan also appeared a short distance from the trio. His eyes were cold and indifferent as they glanced at them. If it was not because the soul of the nihility devouring flame had reached the DI state, he would have already killed the other two. Otherwise, how could they have been allowed to remain alive until now? However, he also understood that the reason the nihility devouring flame had fought with all their strength was merely to obstruct him. Hun Tiendi. Jiu Yuan lifted his head. He looked at the figure controlling the Tushi ancient god Jade. A cold glint flashed across his eyes as he stepped forward. The space fluctuated and he appeared behind Hun Tiendi. A world tide surged. Finally, it turned into a huge tidal palm that fiercely smashed towards Hun Tiendi. Bang! Hun Tiendi laughed loudly in the face of Jiyu Yuan's attack. A palm was struck forward and the space was shattered. He directly received Jiyu Yuan's palm strike head-on. Jiyu Yuan, it's too late. Next, let's wait for the Tushi ancient god mansion to appear. Hun Tiendi swiftly pulled back. His hand was still tightly grabbing onto the Tushi ancient god Jade. Jiyu Yuan's expression sunk as he heard Hun Tiendi's words. His eyes glanced at the magma sea below and found that the whirlpool on the magma sea had suddenly expanded 10 times. Bang bang bang! After the whirlpool was expended, a 10,000 feet large magma fire pillar suddenly spat out from the magma sea in all directions. Many from both parties were caught in it. The extreme heat and offensive strength immediately resulted in deaths from both parties. Hun Tiendi revealed an increasing wild joy in his eyes as he looked at the giant waves appearing on the surface of the magma. He could detect that the Tushi ancient god Jade in his hand had suddenly become strangely hot. The 10,000 feet large magma wave rose suddenly before it came smashing down ruthlessly. It caused magma to splash across the sky. That rapidly rotating magma whirlpool also gradually slowed. A huge magma began to protrude from the surface of the magma sea as the rotation speed slowed. Bright red magma scattered. After which, an ancient stone door slowly rose from the magma and stood in the sky in front of the many heated pairs of eyes. The magma on the stone door swiftly disappeared. An ancient and desolate aura immediately filled this world. Everything was silence under this aura. Even those as strong as Jiyu Yuan or Hun Tiendi felt a terror from within their hearts. It was an aura that stood above this world. Countless pairs of eyes gathered onto the ancient stone door. Finally, these eyes focused on the 3 ancient words on the stone door. Ancient God Mansion. Hun Tiendi's eyes had unleashed a terrifying light at this moment. Even his calmness, his heart involuntarily pounded when he personally saw the words that he had pursued for thousands of years. I have finally found you, Hun Tiendi muttered to himself. Finally, he involuntarily faced the sky and laughed wildly. His laughter was like thunder as it reverberated across the sky. Is this the legendary ancient god cave? Jiyu Yuan was a little absent-minded. He was startled as he looked at the ancient stone door that stood quietly on the magma. The aura on it allowed him to understand that this was not some fake object. Instead, it was a genuine Do Di object. Only something that was left behind by the legendary Do Di could cause him to feel extremely frightened. Jiyu Yuan recovered a moment later after seeing the quiet and unmoving ancient stone door. His eyes contained a somewhat complicated feeling. The 8 ancient clans had engaged in multiple chaotic battles for this ancient god mansion. It was unexpected that it could be summoned thousands of years later, when only 4 of the 8 clans remained. The enormous ancient stone door stood on the magma. Everyone appeared exceptionally tiny in front of its giant size. In their eyes, this stone door appeared as though it belonged to another world and was unusually mysterious. Xiao Yang let out a long breath. Although this was already the second time he had seen the ancient stone door, there was still some shock in his heart. He could detect that the closer he was to the stone door, the greater the pressure he felt. Based on his guess, there was likely very few people amongst everyone present who could head to the front of the stone door. The ancient god cave has already appeared. It is likely that Hun Tiendi will act to snatch the embryonic DI pill. However, why has that mysterious creature not appear? A light flashed within Xiao Yang's eyes as they cautiously swept over the magma sea. Due to the appearance of the ancient stone door, the entire sea region seemed to have been enveloped by a strange pressure. Under this pressure, even Xiao Yang's D-state soul was unable to probe the activity within the magma. Hun Tiendi inhaled a couple of deep breaths as he stood in the sky. Only then did he suppressing the churning emotions within his heart. Immediately, he slowly raised the Tushi ancient god Jade in his hand. The ancient jade vaguely had a light flowing over it. During the time that a light was flickering over the ancient jade, there also seemed to be a light flickering over the tightly shut ancient stone wall. That ancient door, which had been tightly shut for 10,000 years, seemed to show signs of being about to open. Hun Tiendi seemed to rejoice upon seeing this scene. Before he could open his stride and advance, a figure came hurrying over and attempted to snatch the ancient jade from his hand. Jiyu Yuan, are you unable to hold back any longer? Hun Tiendi laughed coldly upon seeing this. His body flashed and he appeared in the distance, dodging Jiyu Yuan in the process. How can it be so simple to open the mansion? Jiyu Yuan laughed coldly. His body flashed again and it closely followed Hun Tiendi like a shadow. It did not give him any time to open the mansion. Murderous intent surged within Hun Tiendi's eyes as he saw Jiyu Yuan continue to pester him. His strength was comparable to that of Jiyu Yuan. If the latter insist on pestering him, he would really be unable to divert his attention. Many pairs of eyes looked at the two light figures that seemed to be moving together in the sky. All of them could only clench their hands and stare. They were unable to intervene in a fight on that level. Xiao Yang glanced at the battle in the sky. His ear suddenly moved as he heard some intense magma churning sound. Immediately, he turned his eyes towards the sea of magma, only to see that it was calm and seemingly void of ripples. This scene caused Xiao Yang to frown. However, he did not shift his eyes away. His gaze stared intently at the surface of the magma. This silence continued for a couple of minutes before he suddenly shrank his eyes. A stern cry sounded, "Get far away from the magma, hurry." 100,000 feet giant wave suddenly rose on the calm magma sea as this sharp cry sounded. Soon after, an earth-shaking roar resounded over this place in a mighty fashion. The expressions of Jiu Yuan and Hun Tiandi changed abruptly after this roar that seemed to have originated from the ancient times was emitted. This aura was actually not weaker than them. Ha 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 ha, this emperor is finally able to see the sky again. The 100,000 feet magma shot to the sky as a ferocious aura, which caused the weather to change, erupted from within the sea of magma. This video will end here.